Good, everyone. I hope you guys have an amazing day. So, in the last episode, if you remember, I did some changes to the existing record trigger flow. That is to add a create task option, right? And I did mention that this is not a really great way to build the flow because we are not following the single responsibility principle. Now, what that means is that a flow, or it's usually this concept is a part of a solid principle. It's a part of object-oriented uh, principle. Um, excuse me. So, uh, in if we copy that principle to flows, right? I mean, it makes total sense. Your flow should do one and only one thing, right? So in this case, excuse me, what we're trying to do is that we are doing something to an opportunity, and based on that, it should update the account record, and and it should update the task. Right? That's pretty much. Now, the problem with this flow, right? It's not following a single responsibility principle because we have an account update, okay, which I understand is a part of it. But then we are doing an extra thing like task, which is nowhere related to an opportunity, right? Because task is a generic object which you can hook up to pretty much. You can create a task um, for different objects, right? So this seems like an odd one sitting here, though you can move in accounts. But let's start with the simple one, right? And another thing, right? Because I'm doing a flow review, right? Like that's the reason why I'm talking about it. And what happens when this account update fails, right? We don't have any default path. That's one thing, right? It's very important. Like I said, right, you might have a logger, so it's obviously a good process to log your exception to your logger. So, you have the flow dot the exception, whatever that is, right? You can pass that variable to your logger. Yeah. And the same goes with the queue and other thing, right? So what we can do in this context, right? I wanted to take this create task and move it to a subflow, because obviously, create task is a very generic. You can pass this to um, you know to a separate flow to make it more modular, right? So let's look at create task here. And as you can see, I have few things sitting here. So what I'll do, just to keep it very simple, I will create a new resource, and I will say a variable, and I will say an API, name a task record, not the task, sorry, that's a, don't even know what the task means, but task record, um, single um, task record, and you're going to look at the task object, sorry, the record, and I said set task, um, and done, right? And what I'll do here, I will obviously um, do an assignment. And so I will do assign the task, assign task. So obviously, you can say task record dot activity date. I don't know what's that date. Let's look at it what it is, right? So we have activity date, and I'll just copy the description. Yep. And I will say task. Okay, task. You can say the task activity date. I will just put it as a due date, and you can say task record. The description equals to this. And let's copy from here, right? Just to make it simple. Then we have owner ID. Okay, and then we have priority and status, right? Okay, we have owner ID, task record dot owner ID, and it's something to do with the get QID dot ID. That's your group ID. Then you have task record dot status, and you should put it as in progress. And obviously, what's the other one? The priority. Task record dot priority. I will say normal. Let's see what we got more, right? So we can, okay. Subject, reach out to customer. Interesting, right? Task record dot subject. Yeah. I'll reach out to customer. Now I need to add the account linkage. I think it's the what ID. I think it's the record dot account. Yeah. ID. Yeah. I don't know. Or is it account ID? Something like that. Oh yeah. It's account ID. Yeah. So I've done that. And so obviously, if you look at it, so I will save it as a new version of Flow. And okay. So it might take a few minutes, okay, a few seconds to save. That's all good. Now, what I've done, right? I've created a task record variable, and I've assigned these values to this variable. Now I need to reuse this variable somewhere, right? And so what that means, I don't need this one anymore. Um, so I will delete this element. Yeah. Now, which is good, right? Now I wanted to outsource, right? If I use the word, if I may, to a different flow, right? The task creation. So I will save it. Yeah. And I will go here and I will say new flow, and it's pretty simple, right? There's nothing fancy here. And oh, sorry, not that one. Why I'm creating the record trigger flow? My apologies, I was in the wrong place. Okay, new flow, and I will do start from scratch. Auto launch flows, yeah, and I will say, and here we obviously need, excuse me, create record and create task. Yep. All right. So I'll close this for now, and I'll go here, new resource. I'll say variable, API name, task record, single task record. Yeah. And I'll do data type as record, and object I will do as a task, and I will say available for input. And I'll do done. And what I'll do here, I'll go here and I'll say task record. And obviously we are doing one, and create task. So what this will do, right? Let me say create task subflow. This is a pretty simple task subflow. So if you can reuse it in different contexts, right? If you wanted to pass if you wanted to create a task, let's say for a different record type or with extra fields, you can do that, right? Because all it's doing is accepting a task input record, right? So your calling flow can pass whatever it wants, and the task creation is happening in a different flow, right? So what I've done, I've actually um, took off that task creation responsibility from the main flow and moved that to the subflow. So so that I can have a single responsibility principle in place. This is an important concept, though, right? I mean, it ensures that your flows are modular, and it will ensure that you can reuse your flows, right? Because I hate when people try to make a spaghetti flow, right? Adding all kind of business logic in one place. That's a very bad way of designing. It's a bad architecture, I would say, right? It's a throwaway piece. Unless you wanted to build a POC to throw away, yeah, sure. But if you're building a production capable application, and where automation is of ultimate importance or significance, then obviously I would expect you to pay attention to the modularity aspect of the flows, right? Okay, sounds good, right? Okay, so now what I'll do, I'll refresh it. Hopefully I've activated this flow. So just a create task. Now I'll go here. Um, okay, so deactivate it. So obviously something happens, and that something, um, it's all good. What we'll do, I'll go to flow. I wanted to retrieve the old, the version which we just saved, right? Okay, this one. Yeah. Um, right. So what I'll do, subflow, and which one? Create task. Create task. Now, input variable. So you can pass the task record. Yep, I want that. I will save it. Now I will activate this flow, right? So you can see that now we have a very simple flow where all we're trying to do is we updating an account, and I'm actually trying to um, do a create task, right, in a separate flow. That being said, yeah, now you could also do this in a separate flow. That's one way. If you wanted to do that, I mean, I would obviously prefer to do that. So that's something, if you're following along, I would like you to do it. Try it on your side to see what you think, right? Because obviously, update record, account update is not really a part of opportunity, right? Opportunity is a separate object, right? Account is a separate object. Yes, we are related, as opportunity and account are related to each other, but doesn't mean you should be writing your business logic in an opportunity flow. This flow should only contain information with respect to updating an opportunity, right? You wanted to change your opportunity status, you wanted to do something else. So all those stuff you can certainly do that. But anything to do with account or contacts or task, all should be moved to a separate subflow. Now, you might also say, hey, but isn't that an overhead? Um, it could be an overhead if you are doing, if this if the, let's say, if a specific subflow is not going to get used anywhere, right? Or if you have a very tiny flow, where you wanted to, let's say you have only few elements, so it didn't make much sense, right? So that's one of the reason why what I've done, I haven't moved this account update to a different subflow. Instead, I moved the create task, because create task is more common scenario which might get used in the different areas, right? So it's always better to make sure you have a process in place where you don't have to duplicate the stuff, right? So that's the reason why I moved this create task to a subflow. Now I've you see, some may still disagree. Oh, I still don't see a value in it. Well, this is a proper design pattern principle, right? And if your flow comes to me with the create task here instead of a subflow, I will decline that flow to be pushed into production, because to me, it's a tech debt you're introducing, right? Even though you can't see it today, but in the future stage, if another flow person start building a flow, and he or she or whatever, right, has a requirement to create a task, then what might happen if there is no create task subflow? That person might end up in doing something here, which is not great, right? Because think about it: if you wanted to change a task creation process, let's say in eight different processes, right? Now, if you're not doing the subflow, what might happen? You might have to go and change this in different flows, like in eight different places, instead of doing it at one just single location, right? So that's why it's very important to consider building the flows in the right way. So that's all I wanted to cover. And yes, like one more thing, you should do a default path here, right? Which is quite obvious. So yeah, that's all I wanted to cover in this episode. Hope you guys have an amazing Sunday. Adios.